So he says, what you need to do is you need to start studying the occult. And this is a priest telling me this.
When you hear the word occult, what does that make you think of? You might imagine people in dark robes and masks, doing strange rituals and chanting in a circle, like this scene from the movie Eyes Wide Shut.
I mean, this paints a picture, which is, it's Eyes Wide Shut, literally.
Eyes Wide Shut is the documentary. This is real life.
I have this sense that there are very powerful secret societies operating today, and we don't really know or understand them.
And for a lot of people, just hearing the word occult makes them instantly think of Satan. So it probably doesn't make you think of going to church. And yet, think of what happens at a Catholic Mass. There's a priest standing at an altar with wine and some small pieces of bread. And then he starts to reenact what Jesus did at the Last Supper, the night before he was crucified. Do this in memory of me. He takes the bread and says, "This is my body." He takes the wine and says, "This is the blood of my covenant." And from here he says a prayer, a kind of incantation that calls on the power of the Holy Spirit. It's an invisible force of the divine, and by the time he's done, the bread and the wine have now become the blood and flesh of Jesus Christ. Now here's where things get a little strange. In the Catholic and Orthodox Church, they're not just saying that the change is symbolic. They're saying that the change is real, literally. It's called the doctrine of transubstantiation. And what it means is that even though the bread and the wine look exactly the same as they did before, the substance of it is now totally different. It is now the real body and blood of Christ. Now, to anybody outside the church, this seems very occult, doesn't it? Because let's look at what the word occult means. It comes from the Latin word occultus, which means hidden or concealed. And specifically, it has to do with the things that are hidden from sight, the things we can't see. And so because the church says that this transformation is invisible, you can't see it or touch it or feel it happening, it is by definition an occult ritual. And yet most people don't think of it that way. Why? We like to imagine that there's a clear separation between religion on one hand and the occult on the other. But does that distinction really hold up? Dr. Richard Spence is a professor emeritus and historian of the occult and secret societies. And he points out that religions are really just approved forms of the occult. Because the basic idea in occultism is that the things we see and experience in the world are just one very small part of a much bigger reality. There's a whole world beyond us that's totally hidden. And so when you look at what most religious rituals are, they're really techniques that people have come up with to try to tap into this hidden world. And whether it's through prayer or meditation or trance states, what they're trying to do is access this higher plane so that they can then use it to influence what's happening here in our world. Now, if all of this sounds crazy to you, consider the fact that it's not just religious groups that are doing this. It's also some of the most powerful and influential people in the world. Take, for example, Bohemian Grove. It's a private campground in Monte Rio, California, that belongs to a gentleman's club known as the Bohemian Club. It's very exclusive, and its members have included wealthy and powerful people like Henry Kissinger, Ronald Reagan, and George Bush.
Well, they've all been members of the exclusive all-male Bohemian Club in California.
Now, what you're looking at is real footage of Bohemian Grove. This is a ritual that happens there once a year. It's called the cremation of care. Here, the members put on robes and meet at the bottom of a huge 40-foot owl made of stone. They stand by an altar, and then they take an effigy that's been shaped to look like a human being, and then they light it on fire. And as it burns, the night is filled with chanting and music. Now, to anybody watching this, it looks like a mock human sacrifice. The question is, why are they doing it? What's the purpose of the ritual? Because whatever you think about what's going on here, what they're doing is very clearly a ritual. Well, the official explanation is that they're just being silly and having fun. They say that this is how they kick off their 2-week camping retreat. The burning effigy is supposed to symbolize dull care. So when they burn it, it symbolizes this idea that they're now leaving all their worries behind. And that ties in with their motto, "Weaving spiders come not here," which means that they're not supposed to talk about business or politics or anything else that could spoil their fun. And yet we know that at least some serious talks do happen there. Like in September of 1942, when there was a planning meeting at the Grove to talk about what became the Manhattan Project. Reportedly, it included scientists like J. Robert Oppenheimer, military officials, and other important leaders. We also know that this is what led to the development of the atomic bomb. And so the questions have really only intensified over time, because why do they wear robes? Why is the burning effigy shaped like a human being? And why does it look like they're sacrificing it to a giant owl? Now, it's not just Bohemian Grove. Dr. Spence's work suggests that there's a pattern where we find many secret societies all throughout history, and a lot of them seem to be involved in the occult, like this group. This is Skull and Bones, also known as Order 322, or the Brotherhood of Death. It's a real student society at one of the most elite institutions in the world, Yale University.
To Yale University's Skull and Bones.
His name in the Yale University Secret Society, Skull and Bones.
Club that's been shrouded in mystery for 177 years.
Every year, Skull and Bones invites only 15 people to join. Their members have gone on to become CEOs, judges, and world leaders like U.S. President William Howard Taft and Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart. The first thing you do when you join is swear an oath of secrecy to everybody there. And all their meetings happen in secret, in a building they call the Tomb. So what exactly goes on inside? Well, only the members of the club know for sure, but Spence proposes that the key initiation ritual goes something like this. The brand new initiate gets naked and lies inside a coffin. The other members then start chanting. They carry him into a special room deep inside the tomb, and once inside, he has to confess all of his most secret desires, all the sexual acts he's ever done. It's the sort of thing that might ruin your reputation if it ever came out. The idea is that this is a ritualized death that happens inside that coffin, and when he comes out, he will be reborn as a fully initiated member. Now that's the symbolic meaning, but of course it also means that the club has lots of embarrassing information on everyone who joins. So if you ever decide to break the oath of secrecy, they can use that against you. All of this became a big question in 2004, when George W. Bush was running against John Kerry for the presidency. At the time, they were framed as two very different people. Bush was a Republican, and Kerry was a Democrat. Bush was folksy and relatable, and Kerry was presented as the more intellectual one. And yet, both of them were members of Skull and Bones, and they were both asked about it.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that tell us? Not much, because it's a secret.
The conspiracy theorists are going to go,
Oh, sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322?
The fact is, they swore an oath of secrecy. And so the big question was, who are they really loyal to? And what does it mean for democracy that the only two choices for president came down to two secret society members in the same club?
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
Of course, Bush would go on to win that election. And after he became president, he promoted at least 10 former Skull and Bones members to key positions in government, including Bill Donaldson to head of the SEC and Edward McNally as general counsel to the Office of Homeland Security. And that's just what we know about. All of this has continued to fuel speculation even today because for most of us, it seems undeniable that the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we as a people are inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. And Spence's work suggests that this is all just the tip of the iceberg, because there are many, many secret societies. They still exist today. And so for me, this raises even more questions. Are we being ruled by an occult elite? Is that maybe why we find so many mysterious symbols on everything? And if it is, what do these symbols mean? That is what I want to explore with you today, because once you know what to look for, you'll find that our world is filled with occult symbols. They're all around us. The question isn't whether they're there. They are. The question is, why are they there? Let me show you what I mean. The first key piece in occultism is the idea of magic, which probably makes you think of someone standing on stage and doing tricks and sleight of hand. He'll usually start off by showing you something ordinary, mundane, but then he'll do something with it that seems impossible, or it seems to defy the laws of physics, and yet we know that it's just a trick. In The Prestige, Michael Caine's character says that you're looking for the secret, but you won't find it, because of course you're not really looking. You don't really want to know. You want to be fooled. But Spence points out that the stage magician is actually doing something deeper than just trying to fool you. He's trying to mimic something. He's doing an imitation of real magic. So what is that exactly? Magic is the art and science of causing change to occur in conformity with will. It's the idea that by focusing your will and intention, you can shift the way things turn out. It's a way of bending reality just a little bit to push things to happen in a certain way. How does that work? Well, Spence gives an analogy. Imagine that our reality is like a flat surface and there's a marble sitting in the middle of it. From here, it wouldn't take much pressure to tilt it just a tiny bit to one side. And if you could do that, then even the smallest and slightest tilt could get the ball rolling. And from there, gravity and momentum do all the rest, and it falls off the other side. He calls this tilting the luck plane, and in theory, this is what occult magic is trying to do. And it's the secret that these elite societies claim to know. And it's one of the tools they use to influence world events. Now, this assumes at least a couple of things, like, is there such a thing as a luck plane? And if there is it possible for us to act on it? Well, Spence makes it clear that he doesn't know, and he's not sure if he believes it one way or the other. It's pretty hard to prove in any definitive way. And so a lot of people will dismiss all this because the very idea of a hidden occult reality just doesn't seem real. But then again, what is real? How do you define real? If we're talking about the things you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by the brain. And we know that there are lots of examples where our ordinary senses break down. For example, if you zoom into any object and go all the way down to the level of atoms and electrons, the universe starts to get really strange. Scientists like Werner Heisenberg have tried to describe just how strange quantum mechanics is. The atoms or elementary particles themselves are not real, at least not in the way we usually think of it. They form a world of potentialities or possibilities rather than one of things or facts. And so it starts to look like at certain levels of reality, the ideas we have about what's physical or solid or real dissolves. And what we're left with are just possibilities, which to me sounds a lot like a luck plane. Now, I'm not saying that you have to believe any of this is true. The point is that there are lots of people who do believe it, and some of those people have a lot of influence. Some have even advised world leaders and politicians. So let's just imagine for a moment that you can do this, that it's possible to tap into this hidden world and tilt the luck plane just a tiny bit in your favor. How would you do that? Well, from an occult point of view, you do it through ritual. A ritual is a series of actions that are done in a specific way, in a specific order, to accomplish a certain result. And so there are lots of examples of rituals, like when you pray for someone to get better, or when you touch your heart and point to Jesus every time you make a three-pointer in a basketball game. And even when people talk about manifesting or using vision boards to attract something they want, these are all rituals. But there's two important things to note here. The first is that a ritual is a way of focusing your intent. That's how you're causing change to occur in conformity with will. And second, the most powerful rituals express meaning through symbols, often in a way that transforms the objects themselves. So now we're ready to look at what might be the most powerful symbolic ritual in the world, the creation of money.
The dollar is king. We're going to keep it that way.
What we're seeing is a slow erosion of confidence in dollar-based assets.
Will now be part of what's called the Great Wealth Transfer.
Money is, in a lot of ways, fundamental to the way our society works, and that's especially true of the US dollar because it's the world reserve currency. At least it still is at the time of this video. And we don't usually think of it as a ritual, and yet, when you look at the dollar bill, it has all these mysterious symbols on it, Latin words and phrases that look like incantations. And as you can imagine, this has fueled lots of speculation and all kinds of wild theories about what they might mean, especially this symbol. It's known as the Eye of Providence, or the all-seeing eye. It's a symbol we find in a lot of Christian art. We see it on buildings and universities, and it's also an important symbol in Freemasonry, a not-so-secret society that's included people like George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and John Hancock. It's one of the oldest fraternal groups we know about. And of the 45 men who've served as President of the United States, at least 14 of them were known to be Freemasons. Now, there's a lot of debate about how involved the Freemasons were in creating the US dollar bill, but most at least agree on what the Eye of Providence means. It symbolizes the idea that there's a divine power that's always watching, who oversees everything we do. And so it's meant to be a sign of God's watchful protection over humanity. Just above the eye, we find the words Annuit Coeptis, which means God has favored our undertakings. And in the center of the bill are the words, In God we trust. So when you take them together, all of these elements symbolically tie the dollar to God and the divine. But why? Why take something like money, which most people think of as material and transactional, and then put all these divine symbols about God on it? What does money have to do with God? Well, if we look at what the dollar really is, it starts to become clear why these two things were brought together. Think about what gives the dollar its value. It's not gold or silver or any commodity. The dollar is backed by nothing more than the full faith and credit of the United States, which means it's not backed by anything physical. When Nixon took America off the gold standard in the early 1970s,
I am determined that the American dollar must never again be a hostage in the hands of international speculators.
The dollar was no longer a claim on gold. Instead, it became what we now call a fiat currency. Fiat is Latin, meaning, let it be done. What this means is that the dollar today has no intrinsic value. The value it does have comes only from the fact that we all agree and believe that it does. Now here's where the pyramid and the eye and the references to God start to make sense. Because by putting these symbols on the bill, what they're doing is shifting the source of power and authority away from people and away from human institutions and moving it towards this idea of a higher moral order that's watching everything we do. God holds everyone accountable. And so, In God We Trust becomes a promise that the bill you're holding isn't just a piece of paper. And when you bring it to a store or a bank or a merchant, you can trust that they'll accept these dollars to trade for real things that do have value. And in a way, it's the ultimate magic trick. Because what it does is it transforms these worthless pieces of paper and ink into something every bit as valuable as gold or silver. In much the same way that priests use ritual to change bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ, so too do central banks turn paper into wealth, just by printing them into existence, by imbuing them with divine symbols and incantations. Because the power of the ritual depends on faith and belief. And the more people who act it out, the more real it seems to be, and the more powerful it becomes. If you think about it, it's really a kind of sleight of hand. It's an illusion to distract us from the fact that money isn't some divine creation that God gives to us. Money is something we make. It's a human construction, and like anything that people do, it can be mismanaged and misused. And we know this because there are times when the illusion falls apart. Like in 1923, when Weimar Germany was hit with hyperinflation. The price of everything suddenly shot way up, and the value of the German mark dropped so quickly that you needed a wheelbarrow full of bills just to buy a loaf of bread. As soon as people stop believing that their dollars have value, it collapses. It's like a spell has been broken, and the effects can be disastrous. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that money is evil or it has to be the sinister thing. It's not. It's a tool that you can use to do good or bad. The point is that the symbols we use have tremendous power, and money is just one example of the way symbols organize society. And when enough people believe in them, they become real. These are the tools through which the social world is built and maintained. And the reason this works is that symbols aren't just the language of the occult. They're the language of the subconscious mind. We see them in dreams, in art, in films and myths all around the world. So whether it's corporate logos or national flags or religious and political symbols, we are flooded with symbolism every day. And if we don't realize this is happening, then it will shape the decisions we make, the things we buy, where we work, and what we think and believe about the world. So what can you do? Well, I'm going to suggest that it all starts when you decide to focus your will and intent. Because when you do this, what it does is it relocates the source of your power where it belongs, in you. Your real power lies in your consciousness. And that is why learning to develop your consciousness is more important now than it's ever been. Of course, to do that, we have to learn to use symbols in a more intentional way. So how do you do that? Well, the way you do it will be completely unique and individual to you. Maybe you pick and choose the symbols that resonate with you. Maybe you design your own symbols. And maybe you come up with your own rituals that empower you to live in a way that brings out your best. But since it can feel overwhelming if you don't know where to start, I'll share with you 3 symbols that I found to be really powerful in my own life. I'll share what they mean to me, why I think they're important, and you can feel free to use them or change them to suit you in your own practice. So, let's get into it. This is the pentagram, the 5-pointed star. Now, a lot of Christians are going to look at this and say, that is satanic. But it's not. And we know that because it's been used as a Christian symbol to represent things like the 5 holy wounds of Christ on the cross. And there are even Christian churches that have pentagrams in their window. And we also know that the pentagram predates Christianity by thousands of years. We see them in ancient Sumeria as far back as 3,500 BCE, and in ancient Egypt and Greece. And so it's one of the oldest symbols we know about. But it's also thought to be very magical for a few reasons. Traditionally, the 5 points of the star are often related to the classical elements. So we have the material elements of earth, water, air, and fire, and at the top we have the 5th element, spirit. It's where we find our consciousness, the mind and the soul. What it shows is the idea of spirit being lifted up over matter. And so all of the material elements are being used to serve and promote the spirit. But when you flip everything upside down, now we find spirit at the very bottom. And in this situation, the soul is being used to serve the material elements. And so it's an inversion of the natural order. Why might that be bad? Well, because ideally, we use money and time and resources to help empower people to live better and healthier lives. But if you're using people to extract more and more things, then now we're elevating the material over the spirit. And if we build a world where this inversion becomes the focus of how we live and how we organize society, then what happens is the spirit becomes more and more enslaved by matter. We become less conscious, and we submit to this lower compulsive side. So this is where a lot of the satanic associations come from. And we can see this in a key scene in the movie Metropolis. There's the inverted pentagram, and this is a man named Rotwang. He's building a robot, and he's doing it to try to replace a real woman that he once loved and lost. But when he fails, he uses it as a tool for destruction. In doing that, he's trying to replace the soul with technology, life with control, and freedom with enslavement. And so what the symbol is hinting at is the idea that what we're watching is a complete loss of humanity. Now, that's not to say that technology is evil or bad. It's not. The point is that it all depends on the way we use it. Again, it comes back to intent. Is it being used to empower people, or is it being used to control and limit their freedom? The second symbolic meaning of the pentagram has to do with its shape and proportions. The lines in it follow the golden ratio, so you can derive golden triangles and golden rectangles in it many times over. And you can even use them to make fractals. Why is that important? Well, fractals are a pattern that repeat themselves over and over again in a way that's self-similar, which means that if you zoom in or out at any point, you'll find that same shape over and over again, infinitely. Fractals are one of the most fundamental patterns in nature. We see them everywhere, all over the place. You can find pentagrams in starfish and in fruit and seeds. And this is why the pentagram stands for another occult idea. As above, so below. As within, so without. As the universe, so the soul. It's also known as the principle of correspondence, and it's the idea that different levels of reality mirror each other. And so the large reflects the small, and the small reflects the large, just as a tiny drop of water has the same basic essence as the ocean it came from. And so if you know something about one level of reality, then it also gives you insight about the other levels. What this implies is that the universe as a whole is, in some sense, also mirrored in you. In the words of Mahatma Gandhi, we but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in the world of our body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. This is the divine mystery supreme. A wonderful thing it is, and the source of our happiness. We need not wait to see what others do. Gandhi changed the world in ways that seemed impossible in his time. Without violence or weapons or any sort of army. He didn't use force. He used peaceful disobedience to inspire a movement. And in doing that, he showed us how one person can tip the balance towards freedom. That is the power of focused will and intent. So what does this mean for you? I found that many times when we feel stuck, it's often because we're trying to force something else to change. But see if you can let that go and just shift your intent. Don't try to bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth. That there is no spoon. Then you'll see that it's not the spoon that bends. It is only yourself. So it can be useful to ask yourself, do you have a clear intention for your life right now? What do you want to move towards? And how can you bend yourself to make that happen? Once you have a good idea of what that is, you're ready to take the next step and start your journey. And that's where our next symbol comes in. This is the spiral. It's another very old and sacred symbol. We see them carved into stone temples as far back as 4,400 BCE, and at Neolithic sites like Newgrange dating back to 3,200 BCE. So what does it mean? In many traditions, it's a symbol for the initiatory journey that we all have to take in order to grow and evolve. It's the path to spiritual awakening. But why a spiral? Well, if we think about how most people imagine that life's supposed to go, they tend to think that we're all meant to move towards our goals in a straight line, in a kind of upward progress that only ever goes up. But it almost never works that way. The psychologist Carl Jung pointed out that there is no linear evolution. There is only a circumambulation of the self. What does that mean? Well, for me, it means that growth is a lot like moving around a circle, in a spiral. You start the journey at some point on the outside, and then you move inward, toward the center. And this often means facing the deepest and most unconscious parts of who you are. Every hero must first descend into darkness before being reborn. It's a pattern we find in a lot of myths around the world. The Greek goddess Persephone goes down into the underworld every winter. And when she comes back in the spring, she restores the fertility of the earth. And in the Christian story, God descends from heaven and comes down into the material world to die for the sins of humanity. What this implies is that every journey involves some pain and sacrifice. It has to, because there is no coming to consciousness without pain. But there's also a second part to what this means, because the spiral also symbolizes the ascent out of darkness. In The Dark Knight Rises, Bruce Wayne finds himself inside a prison, a dark pit that opens up to the sky. And as he tries to make his way out of it, he climbs up in a spiral. And as he does that, he has to battle his own self-doubt, inner demons that he thought he'd already beaten and left behind a long time ago. But now he sees them again from a higher point of view. Why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves up again. This is how you move towards your future self. When you look back at your life, you see patterns and themes that seem to keep coming up again and again. This is you circling yourself as you move through time. You come back to the things you thought you knew, and each time you do that, you find deeper truths in it. You become more conscious, you integrate your lessons, and you expand the boundaries of who you thought you were supposed to be. Jung called this individuation. It's a lifelong process of bringing together all the different parts of who you are. It's a return to wholeness, and in a way, it's like finding your way back home. Because the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. So for me, the spiral is a symbol for this winding path that we all go on. And like any path, there will be times when you feel stuck or seem to lose your way. How do you find your way back again? That is where the next symbol comes in. This is the Ouroboros, the symbol of the snake eating its own tail. We see it in ancient Egypt from the 14th century BCE, and in Rome, ancient Greece, and we also find it in alchemical pictures like this one. So what does it mean? Carl Jung wrote that the Ouroboros has been said to have a meaning of infinity or wholeness, but it's also a dramatic symbol for the integration and assimilation of the opposite, i.e., the shadow. This feedback process is at the same time a symbol of immortality, since it is said of the Ouroboros that he slays himself and brings himself to life, fertilizes himself, and gives birth to himself. He symbolizes the one who proceeds from the clash of opposites. And so traditionally, it represents the endless cycles of life and death and rebirth, each one flowing into the next. And because we're all subject to these cycles, it hints at the idea that there's an underlying unity that connects everything in nature. Even the things that might seem very different on the surface are really just different aspects of the same thing. For me, this is exactly what I feel when I have a synchronicity, when a meaningful coincidence shows up in my life and somehow it happens to connect with exactly what I'm going through in that moment. And you can experience this too. Maybe you have a dream about someone from your past, someone you've long forgotten about, and the next day you find them in a crowd. Maybe you pick up a random book and it falls open to show you exactly the piece of information you need in that moment. These things aren't connected by cause and effect. They're connected through meaning, through symbols. And what makes them so powerful is that they inspire in us a sense of awe and wonder. They give us a glimpse of the divine and the hidden unity in everything around us. And when you see it, it feels like an unmistakable sign, a reminder that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Because when you're on the right path, the universe winks and nods at you from time to time, just to let you know. And once you start noticing these little cosmic cairns, once you begin to understand that you're on a path at all, you begin to see them everywhere. For me, this is a kind of real magic that we can all share and tap into, just by taking the time to slow down and notice them. Because real magic resides inside of you. It's not in the smoke and mirrors of a stage, or the images on the news or social media. It's not even in the elite rituals of any shadowy group. It's in your will and intent. And this is the fundamental insight found in almost every esoteric tradition. This is the big secret. You can access it anytime you want. The truth is that change happens the moment you decide. There are infinite versions of you, each living a life shaped by a different choice. The question is, which one will you tune into? One decision, one gentle pivot, and the entire path unfolds differently. Don't underestimate how powerful one moment of clarity can be. The universe responds the second you align. So if you're wondering what to do, just listen. The version of you who already chose